Let's see now. She loves me, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me not. Always lost this silly game. I'll bet many of you played it too. This is the oxeye daisy, and it's often been the center of the game, he or she loves me, he or she loves me not. Now when you played that game, you probably thought you had one single flower in your hand. The oxeye daisy is a composite, which means that it's a composite of many, many flower parts. Each of the white petals, or petal-like parts, actually bears a female flower. So each of these little ray flowers is one entire flower on its own. The middle yellow part of the flower is actually a mass of hundreds of flowers compressed together. Each flower bears both the male and female flower parts. So when you hold one oxeye daisy in your hand, you're actually holding a whole bouquet at a time. Oxeye daisies aren't only complex in form, they're also very complex in behavior. In fact, all wildflowers lead highly unusual lives, especially during their season of love. Today on Wild by Nature, we're going to see how flowers lure, guide, and exploit their insect visitors. Join me, Michael Runtz, as we explore the amazing world of Beauty and the Beasts. What a beautiful flower. This is fireweed, and fireweed, like all flowers and all living things for that matter, has one goal in mind, and that's to reproduce, to produce seeds and offspring. Now, flowers, just like animals, have sexual parts. Here on this fireweed, we see the male parts, these little lumpy things called stamens, and female parts. This huge umbrella part here is the stigma of the flower. Now, flowers, like animals, use sperm to fertilize eggs. In flowers, the sperm is held in pollen grains produced by the stamens. The trick is for a flower to send its pollen to the female parts of another flower, not on the same plant, but a different plant. Now, to get that job done, some flowers, like grasses, use the wind. But the wind's not reliable, so for that reason, most wildflowers, including fireweed, exploit insects or other animals to carry the pollen for them. Bees and wasps and other insects carry the pollen from flower to flower. Well, that's done not because the insects are good-natured animals. It's because they're being paid for their services. Most flowers offer rewards to the insects, enticements in the form of food, and that food is either pollen or, in most cases, nectar. In the case of buttercup, right down here, that nectar is held down in a little sleeve or cup at the base of each petal. I'll just pull one off here so you can have a look at it. Now, the insects must crawl down the petal to the very base to get at that sweet reward. In doing so, the insect rubs against the flower's sexual parts. Now, other flowers hold their nectar in different flower parts. Some, like milkweed, have it in cups. Some, like cinquefoil, have it right on the flower's sexual parts. And some flowers have very long spurs, flowers like columbine and butter and eggs. Different flowers offer different types of nectar to the insect visitors. Different sugars are used, and different insects prefer different sugars. So depending upon what kind of sugar is in that nectar, and also on the concentration of sugar, each flower attracts different kinds of insects. Now, bees often visit flowers for pollen, which they place in little baskets on their legs. This bee right here is just loaded with pollen from the St. John's wort. Okay, so if flowers give insects these wonderful meals in return for carrying pollen, how do the insects know which flower to go to? Well, that's where the flower's color and shape come into play. The amazing feature, though, of flower coloration is that the colors that we see and enjoy are not the same colors seen by the insects. And studies have shown that their color perception is much different than ours. For example, these yellow flowers appear to most insects as a reddish color. And by the way, red flowers in nature are not seen by most insects. And another neat thing is, the color green is seen as gray by most insects. That means any color of flower, whether it's yellow or blue or pink, that color really stands out from a long ways off. But each color is there to attract a certain kind of insect group. Insects do see certain colors specifically. Bees are often drawn to blue flowers, butterflies to pinks. So the overall shape and color of the flower are meant to be a long-range attractant for an insect pollinator. What a wonderful smell in the air here. That fragrance comes from this beautiful flower called white sweet clover. Like many flowers, clover has a smell that is used to attract insects that are close into it. First off, the flower's color and shape are long-range attractant, but in close, special smells are often used to attract insects for pollination. But not all flowers smell this nicely. Some flowers smell like rotting flesh, some smell like fungus. A variety of types of smells are used to attract different kinds of insects. But luckily for us, this great patch of white clover smells wonderfully. Not much there right now, but that'll change by sunset. This flower is evening primrose. It is pollinated by moths that fly at night. During the day, this flower stays closed, holds back its scents until right at the moment the moths begin to fly. So I suppose you might say that right now this flower is full of nonsense. After this break, we'll see some of the invisible patterns only seen by insects. Many flowers offer their insect visitors rewards of nectar, sweet, sugary nectar. Now, to make sure the insects go to the right spot in the flower to get it, they often offer them visual guiding patterns. Just like the landing lights at the airport at night, these guiding patterns on the flowers show their incoming visitors exactly where to land. Right here in this beautiful flower called field bindweed, you can see beautiful patterns of pink and white that all lead downwards into the flower's cup. At the very base of those patterns are 5 little holes. Those are the nectar cups. The insect crawls down the tube, following the trail of color right down to the nectar. Now, in the process, the insect meets the flower's sexual parts, very, very cleverly hidden right down at the base of those petals. So in trying to reach the nectar, the insect visitor has to go by those sexual parts, and the whole pollination cycle can take place then. Beautiful. Many, many, many flowers bear these nectar guides. Sometimes they are spots or stripes. Some flowers, like wood sorrel, have a combination of patterns. Other flowers offer bullseyes. What these nectar guides do is that they speed up the insect's visit to the flower. That makes the pollination process much more efficient, allowing the flower to get on with the seed production business after the insect leaves. We also have a great benefit from these nectar guides as well. They give us a great variety of visual patterns to enjoy in our local wildflowers. This wonderful flower here is butter and eggs. And butter and eggs has its nectar hidden down inside a spur at the back part of the flower. Now, to guide the insect, in this case a bee, where to go, the flower has a bright orange petal part. That tells the bee to land there. When the bee does, the flower opens up, the bee crawls inside and gets the nectar. In the process, pollen is picked up and deposited by the bee. Now, the bees aren't born with the knowledge that that reward hides behind that special pattern. They can smell the nectar, but they can't get at it until they actually walk in that orange patch. They learn by trial and error. Here's one here that's inexperienced. Watch it very carefully. It's going around to closed flowers even and finding nothing. with his long mouth parts trying to get in the right spots. Here is one that's learned the trick. Whenever it lands on a flower, it's always on the landing platform, that bright orange part of the petal. Its head goes in, it gets the nectar, and in the process, it pulls off pollen from that flower. The next flower it goes to receives the pollen. So it's not really a case of the bee exploiting the flower, it's really the flower exploiting the bee. I'm photographing this black-eyed Susan, but I can't see a darn thing. What I'm trying to film are the invisible patterns on this flower that got insects into where the nectar is. Besides the obvious visual patterns that we can see, many flowers also have hidden patterns that are caused by ultraviolet light. Now, how they're formed is quite interesting. Pigments in the flower's petals create the colors that we see. Different wavelengths of light being bounced off those pigments reveal to our eye what color the flower is. Ultraviolet light is also bounced off by some parts of the petal, but we can't see that. However, insects' eyes can. To the insect eye, this black-eyed Susan has a big bullseye right toward the center of the flower. Now, to film that bullseye, I've got to use a very special filter that blocks out all visible light. It only transmits ultraviolet. Therefore, the filter appears all black to our eye. There we go. See, I wasn't lying to you. You can't see through this at all. But it does reveal to the camera what the insect eye sees. Now here's what we see, and here's what the insect sees. Now this amazing bullseye pattern, which really is a nectar guide, same as the visual ones we saw earlier, appears here to be in black and white. But don't forget, to the insect eye, they're seeing a different color altogether, probably a purple on the outer part of the petal, and where the bullseye is, probably a red coloration. It is so neat to think that when you go through a patch of flowers, besides all those visible patterns we can see, there's also a great array of invisible ones too that direct the insect into where the nectar lies. An amazing world out there, isn't it? After this break, we'll meet one of the greatest sex change artists in the wildflower world. Great view. The majority of wildflowers are geared for cross-pollination, not self-pollination. That means the pollen has to leave from one flower and travel to another one. Now, for some flowers, it's quite simple how self-pollination is prevented. They've got a chemical barrier that prevents the pollen grain from germinating on the female part of the flower. In other flowers, it's more complex. Purple loosestrife right here has a really complex system. Each flower of the loosestrife has the sexual parts, but these appear in different lengths. In fact, the male parts appear in 2 different lengths on every flower. Now, this one has 2 sets of male parts that are longer than the female part, the stigma. It's stuck back down the bottom of that tube. This form has the really long female part, and the 2 sets of male parts are both much shorter in length. And this one over here, it's got the female part being intermediate in length between the male parts. So one set of males is longer, other set much shorter. Now the way this system works is that the pollen from one form cannot germinate on the same form of flower. One plant where the male part's the longest, that pollen has to land on another form where the female part's the longest. So this very complex system used by purple loosestrife and a few other flowers ensure that any one plant of purple loosestrife cannot pollinate its own flowers. Whether a wildflower grows in a field, a forest, or a wet marsh, it has the same problem, and that is to avoid self-pollination. This flower right here, orange jewelweed, has gone to the extreme. It actually will change its sex to make sure that each flower cannot fertilize its own eggs. Now, when the flower first opens up, it is a male flower. And this one right here, if you look inside, you see the wonderful white patch of pollen at the top part of the opening. Now through time, that whole male structure falls off the flower, revealing underneath the female structure. Right back here is an older flower that has transformed into a female flower. If you look inside, you'll see a nice little green pointy structure. That is the stigma, the female part of the flower. Here, I'll show you how it actually happens. We'll use this flower right here and just watch the male part come right off. John Bobbitt, there we are. And underneath is the female part, the stigma. So all through local wetlands and other parts of our habitats too, you'll find sex change artists like the orange jewelweed. Many flowers entice their insect visitors with offerings of nectar or pollen as food. But there are some cheaters. Some flowers offer false promises of food to entice insects to come visit them. Right down here is an orchid that does just that. This is rose begonia, one of the orchids. And like all orchids, begonias have one petal, especially enlarged as a landing platform for insects. In this case, it also serves as the enticer for the insect to land there. For what the bee sees here, which appears to be pollen masses, which it wants for food, that's actually modified hairs. The bee lands here, it roams around trying to find the pollen that's not there, and in doing so it finally hits the back part of the petal, which bears the flower's sexual parts. Pollen is pulled off by the female part, and as the bee finally turns around, the top part bearing the pollen masses deposits pollen on the bee's back. Now, not far from this flower, the begonia, is another orchid with a very similar mechanism. Let's go have a look at it. Another orchid that offers false promises of food to insects is this orchid right here, the grass pink or Callaghan. Now, the hungry bee spots this great apparent mass of pollen and thinks, wow, a big meal awaits me. But what appears to be a bunch of pollen is actually a ruse. These are just modified hairs with swollen ends. When the bee lands here, it suddenly realizes, hey, that's not food. And besides that, it suddenly realizes, hey, I'm on a journey downwards because this whole top petal's on a hinge and the bee's weight makes that whole petal collapse, bearing the bee downwards into this winged coffin down here. There it's held by the top part of the petal. And when the bee lands there, it slides downwards a bit. The female flower parts pull pollen off the bee's back. As the bee struggles to escape, it crawls out on its back and glue is applied. As the bee finally escapes into freedom, the pollen masses down here leave with it. A very spectacular flower, a very spectacular pollination story, the grass pink. Isn't this an amazing sight? These are showy lady slippers, one of the orchids. And we're in one of the best spots for seeing this flower, not only in Canada, but in North America. We're in the Pirker Conservation Trail, and it's a fabulous place for these orchids, even during the thunderstorms today. Now, showies are one of my favorite flowers, not only because they're beautiful colors, not only because you have a very long life. These flowers take 17 years to go from seed to flowering stage. But mostly, I love these flowers because they have a very unusual pollination story. Now, this lady slipper has, as all lady slippers have, one very special petal. It's enlarged to form a pouch, and this is the pouch that attracts bees, traps bees, and makes them do all the pollination work for the flower. Now, I cut one flower open for you to show you the inside structure of the pouch. Here you'll see those beautiful guiding patterns, the red and white lines that tell the insect visually where to go. Then you'll see the hairs, which get a bit denser toward the back part of the pouch. The bee then is directed to escape through one of two exit holes. Both exit holes are partially blocked by a really neat structure called the staminode. And the staminode bears the flower's sexual parts. I'll pull this back for you. Now on the bottom part, you'll see that big flat thing. That's the female part that pulls the pollen off the bees. And just behind that, two little dark brown round things. These held the pollen masses, which were very sticky. When the bee squeezed out past them, they left with the bee. So here we have the beautiful structure of the showy lady slipper, a very elegant pouch and a very elegant way of being pollinated. Wow, these stunning flowers are cardinal flower, growing here by a lovely little rapids on the river. The color red is a very rare color in nature and wildflowers. That's because most insects can't see the color red, but one animal can, and that animal is the hummingbird. Hummingbirds see the color red, and they are drawn to this flower because in this flower lies a reward for it. Cardinal flowers have very long spurs. At the base of that spur lies the nectar that hummingbirds seek as food. When they go to the flower, they probe their long beaks down into the flower to get at the nectar. When they do that, their foreheads, top of their heads, rub against the flower parts up here, where the pollen is picked off and later on deposited. A stunning flower, seen by very few animals, but luckily seen by ourselves as well as hummingbirds. Wildflowers are undeniably beautiful, but they are much more than just a bunch of pretty faces. Thanks for coming along on this journey into the amazing world of Beauty and the Beasts. Join me next time for another adventure where everything we meet is wild by nature.